Do you want to get started with Procreate, but you're not really sure where to start? Then this course is perfect for you as we will go over all of the basics of Procreate, like brushes, colors, and layers. And at the end, I've got a fun project for you.
Now let's get started by installing Procreate. So head on over to the App Store, click the search bar, type out Procreate, and then you'll find it here. So this is the one that you're going to want to install. I've already got mine installed. It's around $10 and it's a one-time fee, so there's no renewal fees. It's a really good deal if you ask me. I'm just going to hit open. And then this is what it'll look like. So I've already got some artwork that I've made, but yours will be blank and you'll just have a few demo canvases showing. Now up here you can see a few different options. The first one is select, so you can bulk select different artworks, and then you can either preview, share, or duplicate or delete. I'm not going to do any of those right now. Next, you can import files that you've either exported or that others have shared with you. Or you can create a canvas by uploading a photo, like so, and then you can use it as a base for your artwork. I'm not going to do that right now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hit this little plus sign here. So this is going to be where you can create a new canvas. As you can see, there's some created for you by default, and then underneath these are all the ones that I made myself, and it'll save it for you. You can also delete them if you no longer need them. But what we're going to do is going to create a custom canvas. So here you can type in the width and the height. These are in pixels, so if you have a certain pixels that you want to use, then you can type it out here. I would recommend using at least 1000 pixels by 1000. But personally, I like to go around 3,000–4,000, and also depending on how many pixels you have entered, it will also edit the amount of layers that you can have. So if you make it a lot bigger, say 5,000 by 5,000, it'll only give you 17 layers. So that's also something to consider. Let's just keep it in the middle and go to 3,000. All right, now let's talk about the DPI. DPI is the resolution that you want to enter. So I always go with 300 DPI, which is high enough for printing. You also have 72 DPI, which is for the web, but I wouldn't recommend doing that. So I always keep it at 300, and then if you want to use it for web, then you can always downsize it later. The problem with setting it to 72 DPI is if you ever want to convert it to a high resolution artwork at 300 DPI, you wouldn't be able to do it, as your artwork will become blurry and pixelated. So let's not do that. Just set it to 300 DPI and you're always good to go. Now, you can choose the color profile you want to use. I use RGB, but if you want, you can also set it to CMYK. And here you can also edit your time-lapse settings. I just keep mine at the standard screen size and then have it set to good quality here. Here you can edit the canvas properties. You can change the background color if you like. I just keep mine to white. You can also change this later on. And then you can choose if you want the background hidden or not. So you'll have a transparent background. And the last thing you can do here is change the name of your canvas and then hit create. Now let's start off by going over these options up here. If you click on the gallery, it will take you back to your artwork with all of your canvases. If you click on the Actions tab here, you'll get a whole bunch of other options that we'll go over. You can either insert a file, a photo, if that's how you want to start your artwork, and then draw over it, you can do that. You can also add text or a font to your artwork, or you've got some basic options like cut, copy, paste, but I've also got some shortcuts that I will show you later on. Next, we'll head on over to the Canvas tab. Here you can either crop and resize or flip your canvas, and something that I like to use is this drawing guide. So if you want to use that, you can activate it like that, and here you can edit your guide to make it bigger or smaller, or edit the thickness or the opacity, and then click done. I'm just going to turn that off for now because I'm not going to be using it. Then we've got the share options, which I will go over later when we will be exporting our artwork. The same will go for the video. And then you've got some preferences that you can edit. You can go for a light interface or a dark interface, or if you're left-handed, then you can hit that and it'll bring the panel over to your right side. And over here, we've got the help section. So if you're ever stuck or need any help at all, then be sure to check out this section. Now let's get started with these options up here. I'm just going to grab my pen. We're going to start off with the brush section. So drawing in Procreate is pretty straightforward. All you want to do is select a brush, and then you can draw with it. If you want to erase it or go back, you can use this back button here. And you've also got a forward button here. Or if you want, you can tap 2 fingers and then it will undo as well. You've also got these 2 options here. This one will increase or decrease the brush size. And this will increase or decrease the opacity. I usually have my opacity set to 100, and then depending on how thick or thin I want to draw, I will change that. If we decrease it all the way, it'll make it really thin. And if we increase it, it'll make it thicker. Now let's take a look at the brush library. So Procreate comes with a whole bunch of different brushes, and you can see the different sections they've got here. Keep in mind that these sections may look a little different for you because you won't have any imported, or this is a section that I created myself, favorites. You can do so by clicking the little plus sign here. Give it a name, and then you've got your own new section here. These are some sketching brushes, inking, they've got calligraphy, watercolor. I just recommend trying some of them out, seeing which are your favorites. Let's see, let's try some of the inking ones. And if there are any brushes that you like, then all you have to do is hold it down and then drag it over to your favorites folder. Another thing you can do with your brushes is swipe to the left. You could either duplicate it or delete it or share it. And if you want to edit it, you can duplicate it and then click on it. And here you've got a whole bunch of different options, which we will not go over because that's a whole different course in itself. I'm just going to hit cancel here and then delete this one. Also, I want to mention that if you see this little Procreate icon here in the corner, that means either you've created it or you've made changes to it. So if you see the default ones, they don't have the little icon here in the corner, so then you know that you've changed something to it or you've imported it. Now let's go over the smudge tool, which is this one here.
But first, we're going to create a quick watercolor wash. So pick a watercolor brush.
I'm going to change the color. Now I'll get into the colors a little bit later, but basically all you have to do is pick a color. I'm going to choose this one, and then you can paint with it and then just make a watercolor wash here. Now let's choose our smudge tool, and if you click on it, then it'll open up the brush library just the same as you would with drawing with the brush. But with this one is it will smudge for you. So let's just make this a little bit smaller, and you can also lower the opacity if you want to. And what this will do is it will blend. You can also use this to blend like 2 different colors into each other, or you can blend some of the harsher lines. So that's what the smudge tool does. And for the eraser tool, you can also choose from the brush library. So just choose whichever brush you want to use, adjust the size, and then you can erase it, maybe make it a little bit bigger so you can erase some more. So depending on which brush you're using for the eraser, because sometimes you'll want to use like an eraser with a bit of texture, or if you don't want any texture at all, you might want to use like a harder brush. Let's try syrup. And then it'll erase like this. Now, before we dive into colors, I want to show you my favorite brush in Procreate. It's here underneath the inking section. I also duplicated it and then created a thicker version of it because I love it so much. But this is the standard one that comes with Procreate, so we're going to use it. Let's just see what the brush size is. Yep, I'm just going to leave it at 12 and then select the black. And I'm just going to create a quick flower with it. And let me just show you real quick. The fun thing about this brush is that if you press it lightly, it'll create thinner strokes, and if you press it harder, it will create darker strokes. And if you zoom in, you'll see that it has this nice, yummy texture, and it's kind of a mixture between a pencil and a micron pen, so that's why I love it so much. All right, let's just create a quick loose flower with it. Just gonna erase the middle bit. Let's make a quick center here. All right, there's got some more petals. All right, let's just leave it at that. If you've got more time, then you can be more detailed about it. And then if you want to add like more details, you can always make your brush size a little smaller and then add some veins or add a little bit of shading. Now I want to show you the color palette. Down here you can see it has all these different options of how you can view it. I like to have mine set on discs, which is a combination of both the circle here where you can pick all the colors. It has a history section which you can also clear, and down here it has a small palette. But you can also set yours to the classic view or to harmony. This one is black, but if you have a different color, then you can see it chooses for you. You can pick its complementary color or easily choose another color. You can also set it to value. So if you have an exact hex code, you can enter it here. Or the palette view, which is also a favorite of mine. So these palettes down here, they come with Procreate. You can set them as a default and then they will show up here. But I created my own palette. This one's called Watercolor. I also have one for greenery. You can create your own palette by clicking the little plus sign here, then enter a name. And if you want to add colors, then all you do is go back to this disc here and then choose a color click on it, choose a different color, and then you can go on like that until it's full. You can also rearrange them by holding them down and then dragging them, or if you want to delete it, then just hold it down and then click delete. I'm just going to go back to my watercolor palette and set that as default, and then go back here. And one last thing I want to show you with this color disc here is that if you want to set it to total white, all you have to do is double tap this side here, white, and you can do the same with the black. Double tap here and it'll automatically snap to the black. Now, if you want to color an object that you have, let me just show you. I'm just going to choose this pink color here. What you can do is drag this color into the object that you want to color. But it does have to be a fully closed object. So this probably won't take because the lines are semi-transparent. Let me just show you what it'll do. Then it'll just take all of the background as well and color the whole area, and that's not what we want. So if you want to color that way, what you will have to do first is create an object or an illustration that has a fully closed background. Wait, let me just choose black here. You'll have to see if there's no gaps, then choose your pink, and then you can drag your color into it and it'll select this object only. But with this flower, since it has a lot of gaps, it won't work, so we'll just have to color it manually, which is also really nice because you can just choose which brush you want. Let's choose this one with a little bit of texture, and I'm just going to enlarge it and see if it's the right size. So before we color our flower, what I'd want to show you is the layers panel. What I like to do is create a second layer. Just hit this plus button here, then hold it down and then drag it down to the bottom. And then we can use this one to color. We've still got our pink selected here, and make sure we're selecting the bottom layer, and then we can go ahead and color our flower. Let's also take a look at the adjustments panel over here. Here you've got a whole bunch of options of things you can do with the layer that you have selected. So check which layer you've got selected here. I want to change the colored area. So what I'm going to do is merge these two layers by pinching them together. And there we've got one layer. Now you can change the saturation of the color, or change the hue or the brightness. Or another fun feature is the recolor option. See this little arrow here? This will choose which color you're going to change. So you can choose if you want to change a lot or a little bit of it, and then you can choose a whole different color. I'm just going to go for a, let's see, let's go for a brownish nude pink. Now let's take a better look at the layers panel. So like I showed you, that you can create different layers. You can also change the background layer here. Or you can turn it off if you want to save your objects or your illustration as a PNG, then you'll want to turn off your background color here before saving it. What you can also do is duplicate your layer, select it, and now you've got two flowers. It's a little bit to the side. Now that I pushed it to the side, if I want to move it over, it will be cut off. So just keep that in mind when moving your objects. Let's just delete this layer. What you can also do is create a group with these. So if you want to move this object, you'll hit that button here and it'll just move the layer that you have selected. But if you want to move both of them at the same time, then you'll want to group them. So swipe to the right, select both of them, and then you'll get this option group here. Now click on the whole group and then you can move it around like that. You can also tap it and then rename it. Flower. Or you can also flatten it so that it becomes one layer. If you've got too many layers in your artwork, then this might be an option if you want to reduce some of them. You could also collapse this group or open it up again. You can select them, deselect them. Another great feature is this end button here. If you click on that, it will show you all of the options. You can lower the opacity. You can set it to multiply. You might recognize some of these from Photoshop. So for normal illustrations, I do not use these options, but for watercolors, I might play around with some of them. And also, if you click on the little icon of the layer, you'll also get some more options. So you can rename your layer, you can select it, copy it, or a bunch more options that you can check out.
Now let's go over how to select an object and how to transform it. So we'll go up to this little button over here. This will select the layer that you have active in your layers panel. So in our case, we've got the whole group selected.
But if you want to select one of these layers only, you'll want to go in and select one of those. Then you can use that to select it and then move it around. So now it's only moving the colored part of the flower. You've got some other options down here as well, which you can use. I usually have mine set to uniform so that you can scale it proportionally and rotate it proportionally. But you can also use the free form, or you can distort it or warp it. But for me, I usually have it set to uniform. Another nice feature is the magnetics, so that you can move the object and it'll snap to the grid. You can flip it horizontally or vertically or rotate it in steps of 45. Or you can just go back and reset the whole thing. Let's take a look at the other selection button over here. If you have it set to automatic, you can press down and then it'll select the background, or if you want to select the flower, it'll do that for you. But what I usually use is the freehand section. So you can select a part of your flower, like this petal here. Let me just see what layer I've got selected. Okay, I've got the colored area selected. So what that'll do is it'll copy or cut this part for me. So to do that, I'll have to swipe down with 3 fingers, and then I can either copy or cut and paste, or copy and paste, but I usually use cut and paste. So what that just did is it cut it and then it pasted it into a new layer for me. So now I can select that with the arrow tool, and then I can move that around however I want it. Another option with this selection is that you can flip it horizontally, vertically, or rotate it just like before.
Now let's take a look at our exporting options. Click on the Actions tab up here. Under the Video tab, you can export a time lapse of the whole video.
You can also click up here to replay a time lapse to see everything that we've done. Then if you want to export it, you can choose either 30 seconds or full length. And you've got all these options that you can export it to, or you can just hit this one here, save video, and it'll save it to your iPad directly. If you want to save the artwork, you can either save it as a Procreate file, so you can share it with others, or you can save it as a layered PSD file, as a PDF, a JPEG. That will give you like the background and everything as well. If you want to save it as a PNG, then what you want to do is turn off the background here. Then you can save it as PNG. We've also got a TIFF option, which I've never used personally. And then we've got these options down here, which are really handy. And as you can see, you've also got PNG files, which is the same as this one here, but the difference is that this one will export all of the layers that you have visible. So it will export this as a PNG and this one as well. So it will export a total of 2 different PNG files. And if you choose this PNG, then it will export 1 PNG only of all of the artwork that is visible. You've also got the option to export the different animated formats right down here. And that's it for exporting. So now that I showed you the basics of Procreate, it's time to do a fun project. So for the course project, what I'd like you to do is to create your own floral bouquet or your own floral piece. So what I like to do is head on over to Pinterest. I'm gonna just hold down the icon and then swipe it here to the left so I can split my screen. So here's a flower that I already saved to one of my boards, but if you wanna search for something, then just type out flower or blossom, magnolia, whatever you like to draw. Choose one image, and this is the one that I'm gonna pick. Now you can pick a brush that you want to use. I'm going to use my favorite brush, the dry ink, but if you want, you can choose one of the sketching brushes. And then I'm just going to make a light sketch for the petals. So I first made a sketch with a thinner brush, and then now I'm going over it with a thicker version just to add a little bit of shadows and a little bit more definition to the flower and to give it a more of a definite shape. All right, so I'm gonna add another layer for the leaves. Sometimes I'll merge them later, but for now I'm just gonna add it to separate layers so If I want to remove them all together, then you can do that just by hitting delete over here, and then you can just start over. First, I'm making like a light sketch to see where the leaves go. Let's see, I've got a little bud sticking out here. I've got one going over here. It's a little bit too far. I'm going to delete it. I'm just going to move these over down to the middle by swiping to the right and then creating a group. Now I can select the whole group and then move it down the middle. All right, now let's finish these leaves. And then one more little bud over here. I'm just going to remove this leaf here because I don't like the way it's going. So I'm going to select this group here and then move it a little closer. Say right about there. And then we can go and erase part of it. See how it's not erasing this flower, the large flower over here, because we're on a different layer. And that's the reason I like to work in layers. You can always merge them later on. Make the eraser a little bit smaller. Remove some of that. I'm just going to add one more bud here. And maybe just another leaf here just to even things out a little bit. I'm going to make this one a little bit bigger. All right, now that I've got the basics down for that, then I'm going to go over it again with a little bit of a thicker brush and then just define it a little bit more and add some more shading. I'm just gonna make one last leaf here just to balance it out a little bit more. Now let's give this flower some color. I'm gonna create a new layer and then drag it underneath. Let's choose a nice nude pink for the petals. And then I'm gonna choose a different brush. Let's choose this one. It's got some nice texture to it. Let's see what the size is. Maybe bring it up a little bit. Yep, that's good. Now I'm just gonna roughly color it in. I don't want it to be that nice and neat, so I'm just gonna do it roughly. But it all depends on what style you want to go for. Let's also give these little buds some color. There we go. Now I'm going to choose a bit of a darker color and then make my brush a little bit smaller and then add a tiny bit of details with the darker color just to add a little bit of shading and depth. Just a little bit of darker shadow in the middle. All right, that looks good. This one, forgot about this one. All right, now I'm going to create another layer for the leaves. Let's see, maybe like a grayish green, or shall I go for a bit of a darker green? Let's just try it out. We can always erase it. I think I do like that color, maybe a little bit lighter. All right. Now I'm going to do the same for the leaves, just add, roughly color it in, add a bit of color. It doesn't have to be neat at all, but that depends on your style, what you like. Make it a little bit smaller for these little leaves and stems. All right. One last leaf here. And then I'm going to do the same and add the darker color make it smaller, and then you can add a little bit of shadow just to give a little bit more depth. All right, that's it. What do you guys think? It's pretty cute, right? So if you're done, you can swipe that to the left. And now we can export it. Like I showed you before, you can either export it as a JPEG or a PNG, and then you can post it on Instagram or export it for a collection that you're making. If you post it on Instagram, then be sure to tag me. Thank you guys so much for following along, and I hope you create beautiful, gorgeous things.